Welcome back. In this video, we're going to have the camera following the player. Now, there's a very easy way to do it, but I'll show you the problem with it. The easy way to do it is making the camera a child of the player. This child-parent or parent-child relationship is very common in modeling and programming as well, in the sense that what you do is bring one object, make it the parent, and set the other one as the child. And so if the parent moves, then the child moves, okay? Now if the child moves, the parent doesn't move, okay? So the child can sort of move independently, okay? But if the parent moves, the child will move for sure. So if we do that, so the player here, and I just grab the main camera, okay, and put it onto the player. So now it's sort of a child. The camera is a child of the player. And so that's how it works here. So now if I hit play, everything seems to work okay. So as you can see, the camera is sort of moving. I'm sort of looking at the game screen down here. Everything seems to be fine. Okay. Now, did we solve our problem of having the camera move around? Looks like it, but the issue will be when we sort of have a bit of this rotation. And then you can see, okay, it's kind of a cool effect, but because the player is rotating, the camera rotates as well. And so you get this sort of, I mean, like I said, it's kind of a neat effect, but probably it's not what we want here, okay? But you can see where maybe it would be something you'd want to sort of work with or modify. So what we're going to do is not parent the camera to the player. We will actually create a script, and that script will allow the camera to follow the player and not worry about these, having to deal with rotations or whatever. So what I'm going to do is just hit the play there to end the play mode, and just pull that camera out, okay, and put it back there so it's no longer a child of the player. So what we'll do next is click on the camera, and we will add a camera controller script. So just like we did before, we'll come down and do new script, and we will call this camera controller. Okay, and make sure it's in C#. We'll create an add, and then that should bring up our mono develop here when we click on it. Now what I'm going to do is, because it's put it in the main folder, I'm going to put that into the scripts folder. Okay, click on that, I guess. Different ways of doing it, and open it up. All right, so now we've got our camera controller one, and I'll just make this, I should have done this before with the other one as well. I could make this a little bit bigger. Zoom in a little bit. For some reason, Control Plus never seems to work. You have to do it from there. All right, so we've got our camera controller. We want to put in a couple variables to start. First of all, we have to think about how this camera controller is going to work, and it's going to work by following the player. So we have to have this script sort of figuring out where the player is. You can't just do that by, we can't just tell it, look for the player. Okay, we have to sort of program that in. And so it's actually quite easy. What we're going to do is create a public variable, okay, so that we'll be able to access that in Unity. And what it's going to be is a game object. So we're going to be able to actually put the game object in there, and we will call it player, okay, because it will be the player. Second thing that we have to do is create a private variable. So this one we won't be sort of playing with. It's going to be a vector3, and that's because the camera has the X, Y, and Z. We're not really worrying about it too much, but it does have the 3 X, Y, and Z dimensions there, and we will be setting that, we're calling that the offset, okay? So what this is going to be, the offset is going to be the difference between the player's position and the camera's position. And basically what we're going to do is move the camera based on that offset, okay? So at the start, we have to calculate how much the offset is, because this is going to be the amount that is sort of that difference in position that we want to maintain throughout the game. And then as the player moves, we will move the camera the same amount, but keeping the offset. So in the start function, okay, we need to, like I said, calculate this offset. And basically this offset is going to be the position. So we have to put transform.position. So this is the position of the camera, because this script is on the camera, minus the player's position. So what I do is indicate that by the player.transform.position. Okay. So, and then make sure you end with a semicolon there. So, and now notice that this is turned red here. The reason is that I put that as a capital P. I should actually probably make that a lowercase p to stay consistent. And now you can see that this is no longer showing up as red as an error there. Okay, so we've got the first little bit of the script. We've set up two variables, player and offset, and then we've also determined what this offset is. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just sort of show you, how can I do this? There's something called a debug log. Okay, once my keyboard comes back, debug.log. That's interesting. Okay, there we go. Debug log. And what I'm going to do is in that debug log, I'm going to put that offset. And it's actually going to calculate it for me. Okay, so what I can do is see what this is. So I'm going to press save here. I'm going to go to the game. And what I'm going to do just before I start is I'm going to just take that camera and move it a little bit. So camera. And this won't be the final position, but I just want to show you something here. So I'm just going to move the camera off. Okay, so the camera and the player are just in different locations. So when I hit play here, okay, you can see down here there's sort of 0, 0, 0. Okay, now it wasn't quite what I expected. I thought the offset would be a little bit different. Oh, and the reason is because it doesn't know what the player is. So let me go back here and drag the player in. So it's saying player, none. It's a game object. So I have to tell it that it's this player here. So I put that in. Now it should work. That's why there was an error before. So now you can see that this offset is negative 5.0, negative 5.1, and negative 10. And that just happens to be exactly these numbers. That's because the player, if I look at the player there, its position was 0, 0, 0, and the camera's position was 0, negative 5.12, and negative 10. So those are the differences in the x, which is nothing, in the y, which is negative 5.12, and in the z. Okay, so that's what's sort of going on there. Now if I move this character around, if I move my player, I'm actually not going to get any difference because the offset is still this offset. Okay, and it just calculated it once. It's not recalculating it. All right, so we're kind of we're getting close, but obviously the camera is not moving around. So what we need to do is in the update here, we need more than this just debug log. Okay, we need to actually sort of get the player to move. So in the update function, I am just going to add a transform.position. So what I'm doing is taking the camera's position and I'm going to set it to the player's transform.position and just add the offset to that. Okay, so I've added the offset, so that should work. Now what I'm going to do here, a little bit different. I think this should work. Transform.position. I'm just going to show you how this would work here as well. I'm going to put this as transform.position. So it would actually give us the position of our object, okay, or of our camera in this case. Now, a little sort of small little detail here. Cameras, because it's good to have all the motion done, everything completed before you sort of move the camera. What we're going to do is put this as to a late update. And basically using that late update, it makes it sort of guaranteed to run after everything in the update function has completed, or even in the fixed update function has completed. Therefore, we know for sure that the player has moved. Okay, so that should be enough to get it working. So let's hit File and Save here. Go back to Unity. Like I said, we've already got sort of the camera offset a little bit, so we can see there. Now, what's going to be different here is that down here, so there was the original offset, okay, which is what the new position should be, which is good. And then as I move this guy, you can see as I move it along the x-axis, the x value is changing, okay? And then as I move it down, the y value. Now the z should never change, okay, which it doesn't look like it is, which is good, because there is no up and down, okay? There's moving along the x and moving along the y-axis. What you'll notice is that the camera doesn't rotate, okay? And that was our big change that we had to do. And the reason it doesn't rotate is because we're only doing with the transform dot position. We're not dealing with the rotation at all. So even though the player, we can see, is rotating along the z-axis or rotating around the z-axis, we don't have the camera doing that. All right, so that's a very simple sort of camera follow script with a bit of an offset. Okay, like I said, they can get very complicated, and you've probably played games where the camera doesn't quite work all the time. Okay, it gets stuck behind walls and you can't see the enemy and things like that. But in this game, it's pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do next is actually create the important element of the game, the pickups, and so we'll do that in the next video. See you then.